like Joe said, we're just trying to get it right after all these years and keep going, which is the way any journalist would do it, any media publication, hopefully. So that's why we're here anyway. So, you know, the way I kind of look at things is that it seems as though, you know, the upfront marketplace demands, as we all know, are hopefully maybe, you know, for the better of everyone at their tipping point. You know, but one major question about the big marketplace seems to have always kind of now receded into the background. The viability up front. It seems, for some reason, we need it more than ever. This is only a couple of years before where people were calling that maybe we don't need it at all. Anyway, so, you know, the tipping point being, you know, I don't know, we don't know, we're pretty sure where it's going to flow. We don't know exactly what individual platforms are going to get things, but, you know, it could be another bucket, any other bucket, you know, wine glass, IPA mug, Starbucks sippy cup. It's going somewhere, guys. It's going somewhere. Anyway, so, and here's the thing, you know, that always strikes out to me, especially when Disney kind of releases information, that it said last year more than 40% of its upfront buys were streaming digital deals. Disney said overall upfront dollars for them at the time was $9 billion. But that's not the full story, so let's do the math from there. eMarketer estimates total traditional upfront dollars hovered around where it's always been for the last couple of years, $18.6 billion in broadcast and cable. The projection slightly higher to $18.8 billion. So now let's look at just the legacy TV owners. Media Dynamics estimates they grabbed last year $8 billion. So that's a lot. And that was up from 31% a year before. Linear TV was down 5% at $19 billion. And overall, you know, if you add in both things, that comes to a 3% rise to $27.1 billion. Not too bad. Thus, the upfront is still here or around. That's, to me, it seems like it's not going away. Anyway, so if you take a look at the broader digital stuff, which eMarketer looks at, it said they came in at $12.5 million. This is digital video from all the other video platforms. That was up 30%, 28% from the year before. Okay, so, but now, this year, we get the sense it's really about opening the taps. If you're a media seller out there, if you're a network, it's time. Now you got to really move product. You got to move business. Volumes have got to climb. That's the way it works. And I think in part contributing to this was earlier this year when Amazon Prime Video said it was going to do an advertising option for Prime Video. And with their vast amount of inventory, as well as everyone else, that was going to add stuff, especially if you consider all the FAST networks, YouTube inventory, everything in between. So, and here's the thing that Bob Iger said, that streamers, especially from legacy TV networks, need to start being not just profitable, but Iger said, a growth business. Oh, wow, growth. This is really going to grow? You know, I don't know about that. But, you know, so the question is, you know, they're going to be profitable, but really how are they going to get to replace all that growth and all that sustainability and stability that linear TV has had for all those years? So, you know, it's not just about rising subscription fees, but, you know, it's about selling advertising and lots of it. And then there's this from Moffett-Nathanson Research, which kind of threw up his hands in the air. He said, this is what they recently did in one of their reports. They said, quote, streaming may or may not be a good business. I said, okay, well, now we're really in between. Linear video is a train wreck, okay? Maybe they know something. Advertisers are fleeing. Box office hasn't recovered post-COVID and Hollywood strikes, and all that before we even potentially see the brutal AI headwinds play out. Okay, confused enough? Have questions? I'm sure you do. And that's the other thing. Prepare some questions. We want to make this as conversational as possible. And we're going to get going here. And I want my panel to self-introduce themselves from Jason Lim.
Hi, Jason Lim, Chief Planning Officer for EssenceMediacom in the US.
Stephanie Burgess, Media Director at PepsiCo. John Muszynski, Chairman, PMX.
Maureen Bosetti, I'm the Chief Investment Officer for IPG Mediabrands.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dave Sederbaum, and I oversee video investment at Dentsu.
Okay, all right, let's get right to it. So, streaming platforms are taking up much of the discussion, as well as alternative currencies, which we'll get to in a little bit. And this year, the owners are really seemingly to step on the gas. They have to start making money. They have to start selling a lot of stuff. And that's going to change the dynamics of the upfront, maybe, a lot more than maybe a year ago. With this backdrop, John Muszynski, how do you see media sellers' sales strategy in this marketplace?
Well, I'm glad I'm not on their side. I'll leave that for folks like Peter. I think you really have to look at, not just this year, but this year in particular, you have to look at the market as three distinct marketplaces. And as a salesperson out there, if you're not looking at the market in pieces, then you're probably not effectively evaluating what's in front of you. You're sitting there looking at linear, linear entertainment, which continues to shrink, and the dollar support behind linear entertainment is shrinking at an even greater pace. Then you look at sports, you see a slight increase in supply, and you see a little bit of a shift towards sports. So a very different supply and demand dynamic versus linear entertainment. But then you look at the streamers, all the different digital products that are out there. You're looking at almost infinite supply, and the dollars are not shifting over there as fast as the growth that they're seeing from a subscriber base. Very different supply and demand dynamic. So you have to look at these very, very separately, and then have to deal with the fact that you're generally buying from a company that has all three in most cases. So I just think that it's a unique marketplace that we're facing this year, and I think the sales strategies are going to be such that if they're going to do what Bob Iger's suggesting, they're going to have to sell an awful lot more of their streaming products. And the question is, are they going to adjust the price to make it attractive for us to go buy it?
Maureen?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's a very unique market, as John said, because we're dealing with these supply and demand dynamics unlike we've ever seen, especially in the world of streaming, where we have so much more supply, right, than the scarcity that exists in linear entertainment. So you're dealing with very different marketplace dynamics, and I think it's important to really think about how do you construct deals that obviously look very different than you've ever done before. This is a market where you have every right to think differently. You can have a lot more, really listen to what your customers want and need, and react accordingly, because you will need, right, volume is going to be key, especially in those digital video areas. There's so much supply out there that we have access to, not just from broadcast-led partners, but across, as you said, Amazon Prime Video, YouTube, social media. There's so many places for us to go and get video impressions. So you really will require you to think differently and think about how to construct these deals in a much different way.
Yeah, I agree with everything. The only thing I would add, and I say it very respectfully to my sales folks, is that I'm less concerned with their strategy, and I'm kind of focused on what is the value that we're trying to obtain in this market. I think to John and Maureen's point, there's going to be plenty of places to place our dollars. I'm not worried about missing out on one opportunity, because I don't think that there are very few make or break things that you need. So I really want to push what is the value that we're trying to obtain. I think that the streaming price is going to drastically have to decline if people want to be competitive. And then it's a matter of, why should I be placing my streaming dollars in the upfront anyway if there's so much supply and I can be getting it programmatically throughout the year? So I want to be able to push and make sure that we're getting the value in order to enter that future market.
Stephanie?
Yeah, I mean,
especially from that
Right.
business outcome perspective that Maureen was talking
yeah,
about.
that's exactly right. I mean, not to kind of reiterate what everybody has said, but I think like thinking about the options that we have in that digital video space, we can get an impression elsewhere, frankly, for more competitive pricing. And so when we think about, for us, the kind of role that we think of digital video for, efficiencies in pricing are going to be critical. So that is, I think, when we think about how we sell that platform, for us, that's really important.
And in terms of engagement stuff,
Yeah.
how much more value can you put in it, and how much more can you get out from the networks, meeting some of your needs?
Yeah, I mean, we think about it in kind of there's two things that are critically important for us. There's reach and scale, but there's also, we are very focused on building our iconic brands within culture. And I do think like we fully recognize that those CTV platforms have a place for that. But we need to just continue to think about, again, there are other platforms where we can kind of achieve, whether it's that engagement and that sort of kind of push down the funnel objective, there's just other platforms. And so we try to balance the two. We want to be in culture. We want to be where our consumers are and where they're going, but we also need to, at the end of the day, deliver business results. And right now, we see that coming a bit stronger from a more linear perspective.
Jason, from a planning perspective,
I would just echo everything that the panel has said, but I think more and more when you think of the upfront, clearly there's an element of premium nature and finite inventory. And those are the aspects that don't just come about with the content, but more and more they're coming about with audiences, innovation, specific units, things of that nature that would probably become more prominent just beyond just the pricing elements or anything along those sorts.
So looking traditionally, as we always have, the second quarter being a barometer of the upfront market. From everything we've heard, it's been pretty soft. This is on top of everything we were just talking about. So, where are we going from here in terms of CPM pricing? Is that necessarily all good news from a cost point when you're still dealing with reach issues and other factors? Well, we can get into later. David?
I think it's going to be a pretty similar market to what it was last year.
Okay.
I haven't seen a tremendous amount of indications that point to a big drastic difference. And,
Right.
and last year was a relatively down market with favorable pricing from a marketer
Exactly.
and agency perspective. I think that there are enough economic concerns out there that we have to talk to our clients about why they want to make that future-facing commitment, and do they need to invest now, and is there a real need, whether or not you could get that inventory later at a same or better price. So right now I would say it's forecasting to be pretty similar.
John, pretty much, you feel the same way?
Yes and no. It's definitely softer than what I think the sales side would like to see. But if you take a look at options that have been taken over the last, let's say the last 5 or 6 quarters, I think options have been taken at a higher rate, at least by us, than we're used to. And I think that a lot of those dollars were invested under this theory of I have to protect myself and make sure I get my money down. And then we're seeing options being taken during the year, and what that tells me is that we inflated the marketplace last year. So I think that this year, taking a more conservative look and budgeting against actuals rather than what we did in last year's upfront is the right way to go. So that in turn means we're going to probably see a little bit of a deeper decline than we had in last year's marketplace. So I don't see dollars being up by any stretch of the imagination versus a year ago. I think it's more realistic of what should have been in the market last year.
Maureen, how are your clients doing option-wise, if you can give
On
some
the
insight?
options?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's actually been probably similar to the past. I don't think it was anything
Right.
deeper, but depending on the category, there's certainly some clients that went a bit deeper, perhaps. And to John's point, maybe there was a little bit of that. Hey, we got to protect ourselves, and
Right.
maybe we don't need all the inventory, or we found other options in other places. So. But I do think it's an indicator that it definitely will be a soft market. I think that, again, you have a lot of options in how you want to lay down your dollars across the year. You have a lot of flexibility when it comes to digital video. You have a lot of flexibility in programmatic. So there's just a lot more. I think the upfront still matters in the sense that we can plan the year out. There are a lot of benefits to it. But the good thing is that we also have a lot more options. And I think that's
Right.
good for everybody. I think that's good for
Right.
us.
Stephanie, you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, from a brand perspective, this idea of protecting your dollars is very real. And so it is an approach. And the other kind of piece to keep in mind, again, from sort of the brand perspective, is there's a very direct correlation between our media dollars and our dollars to spend and our business performance. And that's, as much as we try to forecast and know what that year is going to look like, things change, things come up, things go down. And so there's an element of protection, and then there's an element of just trying to react to real-time business results. So,
Jason, we talked a bit, of course, about the word flexibility, which, of course, can probably ruin your day, I think, imagine, when it comes to plans, media plans. But I mean, was it, how, when you're figuring out media plans, I mean, where does it come to when someone says to you, I need even more flexibility?
Yeah, flexibility comes about in a variety of ways, one
Right.
of which is the options that we can take, certainly within an upfront construct, but it's also the active optimization against outcomes. And more brands are demanding that we make interventions in real time. And so what affords us the ability to do that is really the question. And how do you navigate your investments more suited towards that environment?
Right. So David, I mean, when it comes to business outcomes, how decent are networks out there to give you better business outcomes and possible guarantees that maybe Peter over here would maybe give you?
Listen,
One-
we talk about it all the time. We talk about it all the time.
He says whatever you want, so you're good. Yeah.
We meet at the local diner and we just cut it
There you
out.
go, there you go.
No, I think it depends on what our clients are trying to achieve and what is their overall objective. I love that point about flexibility, that a lot of what we're focusing on is making sure that we're doing strategic audience buying, and we don't want to be confined and rigid in one network selection or one program selection. So I think when we have conversations with our friends at A&E, for example, it's about a whole portfolio approach and not being locked into one specific network and not being locked into linear versus the nonlinear option. So I think that there's a lot of different ways to achieve those outcomes depending on what you're trying to achieve.
And Maureen, I mean, especially when it comes to business outcome stuff, you've got to figure eventually, you need or a network needs, to figure out what these costs are going to be for them. Especially if they can't meet, and you demand more guarantees from those business outcomes. So, I mean, what I'm worried about is, clients demand all this, but they have to pay more for it. They got to pay more for these extra charges, right? I mean, when it comes to using their first-party data or feeding it to clean rooms that TV network groups have, does that still work for your clients?
I think ultimately it needs to work holistically, right? It's not just about one network and one partner. It's how does it all work together, and really where you're taking accountability, right, and ownership of what that total measurement plan is. It's not just, again, about one partner and one outcome-driven guarantee. It's we need to have the analytics that show how it all works, how it drives results, or how it drives whatever media KPI we're trying to do. And I think if that comes with some incremental cost, but we can prove that it's worth that incremental cost, that's really what it's about. What is that total ROI? And then how do we make sure if there is a small fee that it far outweighs whatever that fee is, because now we're more accurately measuring the impact of that media. So it really comes down to being able to prove that out. But I just think it's about what that total picture looks like versus just going, yes, we can hold everybody accountable to those outcomes or those KPIs, but it all has to work together.
Right. When it comes to sort of like the individual players, I mentioned, Amazon Prime Video at the top. And you have Netflix now in the market, but maybe, less so, even though they have a lot of ad inventory. John, can you point to someone in particular? Is there any individual media seller which seemingly has, a little more sway in the market, or not really? Aside for Peter.
I'm not sure I would answer that. Honestly, sort of gives me a little bit of a disadvantage. But I think I think where you're going with this is that there are a number of new shiny toys in the marketplace that think they're worth more than they really are. And I don't think they necessarily understand the true marketplace and what the true pricing is. And the problem is that most of those companies have sold a business plan into their management that isn't even remotely close to reality. And now they come to you and say, oh, I need $150 million and I need it at this CPM. And I'm looking around for the cameras and going, somebody's trying to, spoof me here? You got to be kidding me. And literally, I think the only way that we can get our point across with the buying community, the investment community, is to show that, become a credible walk-away partner, that we don't have to do business with you. We have a ton of options, and you have to play by the marketplace rules. And I think that's critically important. And I also say that, when we start talking about guaranteed outcomes and looking at outcomes more seriously, there are other vehicles out there that are guaranteeing outcomes or are willing to entertain it because they believe in their product. And it's not necessarily just the products or the sales organizations that you think of. I mean, you take a look at cinema and the fact that they're willing to guarantee outcomes because they have shown results from their product. I think we as investors in the marketplace have to look beyond just the traditional forms of media that can help us to contribute to the outcomes.
Stephanie, it must be tough when you're asking for outcomes and you're going to Peter or another media seller, and then, sorry, don't think of Peter, but yeah.
He's getting a lot of attention today.
Right. Yeah, but so my point is, finding attribution for each channel, it's got to be really tough, when you can't single out one and, one media seller has to depend on another, and what the rest of your media plan is. Also a question for Jason. So, how much does it really mean to you in that regard? Is it just these broader awareness level business outcome guarantees you're looking for, or promises, or near promises? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dependent on the platform and the channel, and we do try to have a pretty distinct role and KPIs for all of our different channels and platforms, but at the end of the day, we do come back to like our mixed modeling and our business outcomes in terms of like, did we drive volume? Did we drive share? Are we being effective in the marketplace? So that is generally, it is kind of the bottom line for us on the brand side. And I think, like, to your point, John, like, if we have a strong party line, right? Like, this is why we hire very smart agency folks like this to help us have a really strong perspective in the marketplace and a party line to say, this is where we kind of draw the line and make decisions. And, we try to be, I want to say, I don't know if we would be first out the gate at everything, but as an organization, innovation is important, and we're willing to test and learn to an extent. And so it's kind of finding the balance, and that's what we kind of work very, very closely with our awesome agency partners to figure out.
So Jason, from all this, when it comes to putting together a media plan, how much more difficult now than 5 years ago?
I think the complexity has increased, certainly, but the same underlying principles sustain. So any kind of measurement in terms of quantification of outcomes are great as a baseline. It's one of many components that we use, though, because MMMs or any kind of measurement in that realm are inherently backward-looking. And the marketplace in which we're operating now moves so quickly that you need to be able to predict where that ball will be in the future. So that's where we look for distinction and differentiation among this fine group of folks that are out here today. Reach is still a qualifier that we're going to go after. Almost every one of our brands are looking for scale. So we need to find those environments that have scale. But at the same time, we're looking for innovation and differentiation. And so what are the unique aspects that we can build reach in any number of ways? It's how you build that reach. And I think that's the thing that we're looking for more and more.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good question, Maureen. I mean, reach, while you seemingly have an advantageous marketplace position, that's still got to be sort of an issue where to get it from.
For sure, and the right reach too matters.
Right reach. That's what Jason
Most
said.
of our clients, whether you're in pharma or travel or selling beer or soda, you're looking, generally speaking, you're looking for new customers, right? You're trying to find either very specific audiences, broad audiences, and reaching those audiences is critical, right? Because that's how you're going to find new customers to bring into the funnel. And so that it's not just about total reach. I think it's about incremental reach and the right incremental reach. And then you can really measure that incrementality and what that does in terms of actually driving results. So I think with all these new channels, you can really understand what that incrementality looks like and how can you go and find those new audiences that are really going to drive those results. So yes, reach matters, but I think it's about finding the right reach.
Yeah, and the only thing, I totally agree. It's about that incrementality, because what you don't want is just to be continuing to heavy up your frequency with those heavy TV viewers, and that's why you need the diversification, and that's why you need the optimization within a portfolio family to say, where should my next dollar be spent? So it's all for us about the incrementality that we can show. And then from an outcome perspective, I do think that we need to recognize that we have, and rightly so, made sure that we've gone to that performance mindset, but I do think that there is also a shift back to the brand mentality to say we need some of those big moments to build up our brand equity, and it's about balancing brand and performance. It's not one or the other, but we need to make sure that we don't only focus on that, because I need to make sure that each channel is working for my ultimate sales objective, which for a client could be selling pizza, but that is how the total video approach works in that, and not just each individual partner. So holding each individual partner accountable to a certain area can get confusing, because I'm looking at the marketplace in general.
Right. John, a lot of this, we talk about the marketplace, but we still have issues, at least we were talking earlier, still about, when it comes to frequency. You figure by now, everyone would have gotten a handle on it. Seems like not quite, but maybe you have a different perspective.
Well, I guess I would look at, and I urge everybody to look at the percent U.S. coverage by cable network, and take a look if you're spending the same amount of money or even a similar amount of money with that cable network that you have in the past. Take a look at the frequency that you're driving at that point, because of cord cutters, the U.S. coverage by network is shrinking at a very, very alarming rate. And you're looking at a number of the different cable networks out there that are in the 30% U.S. coverage, 25% U.S. coverage. Back in when, and I hate to say it, back when cable was just being a commonplace in our industry, we used 50% as the starting point when we would have somebody be in the consideration set. Well, now 50%, you're one of the big boys. If you're spending the same amount of money and you're only getting 25% of the U.S. homes, take a look at what the frequency is. I mean, it's mind-boggling on where that's gone.
Also, the frequency challenge obviously is in the streaming landscape as well. I was watching, I won't say which streaming partner, but I admittedly was binge
You can
watching.
say, it's all right. It's
I
all
won't
right.
say
You're
it.
among friends here.
No, I'm not.
In theory.
Same ad every single break. And admittedly, I was binge watching something. But still, I mean, it was such a bad experience. So we really need to, I mean, not only is it challenging in linear at times, but I think, to John's point, we can at least control that to an extent. The streaming, which we have frequency caps, it is not being adhered to, and then we need to really get a handle on that, because now you've got cross-platform streaming that you're trying to manage, and if we can't adhere to that in a streaming landscape, it's exacerbating the issue.
Yeah, because the biggest challenge is that there's so many different people that could sell the same inventory, right? So you have your frequency caps in place by an individual partner level, but there's so many entry points into that that endpoint in the streaming marketplace. But I totally agree with John that if you're spending the same amount of money, and that was my point also, that it's heavy TV viewers that you're hitting over the head. So you need to make sure that you're right-sizing that investment, you're focusing on your strategic audiences, and that means spending less, but spending it smartly. And that when you turn fragmentation into an advantage strategy for your clients as opposed to a dirty word.
Right. Stephanie, I mean, frequency, especially when you look at some of those, I haven't really spent a lot of time with the FAST networks, but I can only imagine, well, not just total advertising glut, but that's got to be a place maybe you don't want to put that much money into. But yet, the sellers will point out, like, hey, it's growing by leaps and bounds. Like, someone's buying it. Is it all, direct marketing people? Who is it,
Yeah. Sorry, you said the FAST networks?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. It's not, I don't want to say it's not us. I think it's another one, it's an area that we're mindful of, and we recognize that it's growing significantly, and it's an area of opportunity to help us kind of alleviate those frequency concerns, right? It's another place that we can place our ads, but I think we're still kind of figuring out that space as something new. Frequency in general, like frequency in the streaming space, like you were saying, is something that we are extremely focused on because we're trying to kind of manage all the different pipes that come in and all the different, folks that can sell the same inventory, and how do we, as an organization, organize, all of those different buyers so that we kind of create our own marketplace for our brands, and then we can try to alleviate the frequency issues and find that incremental reach. So something we're super focused on. The other thing from a linear perspective that we have found to be really effective for us, and something we'll continue to focus on, is data-driven linear. Like you were saying, it's probably a misnomer that, I mean, it depends. So sometimes we say every single person with a mouth is an opportunity for a soda brand. On the flip
Thirsty
side,
people.
right?
Thirsty people.
Right, exactly. On the flip side, we've identified, we have first-party data, we've identified audiences, and so there are some nuances between our different brands in the portfolio, and so data-driven linear has provided us an opportunity to, more smartly allocate our inventory and find that incremental reach at the right cost to the right people. So it's a balancing act for sure.
I just want to remind everyone, we're open for questions. If you think of anything, if you thought. And Joe Mandisi has a question. And the microphone's coming to you in a second.
Joe, we know your name, but everyone else, please say your name and company for the thousands of people watching on the live stream. Thank you.
Well, I have two questions, if I'm allowed, but I just want to start with a follow-up to Maureen's observation about the frequency on streaming partners. By the way, I think I know which streaming partner it was, most of them. So does that piss you off as a professional? I know as a consumer it must, as a viewer, but knowing that we all talk about scarcity of premium streaming video, that, they're not able to manage their own inventory correctly, do you lose confidence in the ability to buy streaming services when they can't even do that? In broadcast, we knew if a local and a national avail backed up against each other, and sometimes you got to make good for that. Do you get make goods when that happens in streaming? And then I have a follow-up for Jason.
Yeah, admittedly, this is what I saw. It would look like either a DR spot or, like I said, that to the point where it's running in every single break, and there was obviously does lead you to think like there's so much inventory, right, that's not being managed properly. So it does, then you start to question, you know, that kind of marketplace. But I think that it is incumbent upon us, as you said, to make sure that we have the right frequency caps in place, have the right third-party verification, and yes, we will get make goods for those kinds of things, absolutely, whenever we do uncover anything like that. But yes, absolutely.
But it's uncovering it is the key.
Yeah. Right. Well, I was going to say, who do you get the make good from? You know, because if you're running into those issues because they're coming from different sources,
Agreed.
like who do you go to?
So the uncovering is getting even harder, is what you're saying? I mean, is it more difficult because it's so buried, you know, when it comes to some of
It's
the
not just
stuff?
the uncovering, but it's the accountability. Who assumes the accountability when you have multiple partners?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my point about there's multiple entry points into the same final destination point for the consumer. So many people can sell the same inventory. So you just have to put in those constraints very carefully, and you can protect it a little bit.
So kudos to the panel for not even talking about currency once.
We were going to get to that.
Okay.
I was holding off.
But
Shift it there.
There's a question for Jason because I was listening to a Media Rating Council seminar on Friday, and they made a point that this is the last year we're going to be benchmarking stuff off a television universe. That as we move into a cross-platform measurement, the MRC's recommendation is we move to a population estimate, right? Which is interesting because it means that TV, streaming, whatever you want to call online video, are all going to be benchmarked against the general population. I'm curious, I haven't heard agencies talk about audience queuing facilities in a long time, but does this change the way you think about TV, video, and all other media in the mix as we move from this, you know, historic construct of a TV universe into everything?
Yeah, absolutely, as it should. I think the idea of video is as a consolidated offering is one element, but everything else is just the method in which we purchase the inventory. So it's not necessarily a consumer construct or a brand construct for that matter, but one that we built. So for me, it's where can I find the best audiences across environments? As simple as that. The idea of currency, without leaning too much into it, can't just be the tradable asset from a monetary perspective. It has to be something I can plan against as well as quantify. So those are the counterparts to just having a currency. So unless I can plan against it and unless I can quantify across the media landscape, then the virtue of that currency is diminished.
We want to again remind people there's questions, and of course we have one here, surprisingly, from Peter Olson of A&E Networks.
First of all, you all look and sound fantastic, if I may say. So if we mutually acknowledge that let's say the urgency of the upfront isn't quite what it used to be back in the day, any advice to a sales organization on creating more of a flexible 52-week framework that kind of meets the demand in real time and to make sure that as the dollars are released, they are actually available versus literally almost sent to a select group of partners. So any advice from our side on how to change our frameworks with all of you to create more of that flexibility?
Anyone want to take a leap at that one?
You think I'm going to share my ideas with you?
Maybe generally. Anyone want to take a crack?
Yeah, well, I know exactly what Peter's talking about because we've discussed it at great length, but we have to look at doing things differently. It's not, and I really, really get tired of people saying, you know, do we even need an upfront? No one says you have to participate in the upfront. Nobody. If you don't want to buy your inventory there, that's fine. Then you just take the chance of it not being available, you know, in the short term. Now, we all know that the way the marketplace has been, you're going to have your opportunity to go get this programming and these impressions. But is there a different way where the sellers can actually manage their business on an ongoing basis without a structured upfront where 85–90% of their business is done in the upfront? That's the key. And if we want for this marketplace to continue to thrive, we have to be cognizant of the fact that our partners need to manage their business as well. and it has to be both sides looking to win. And I know that's cliche, but we have to find a win-win. But the sales organizations have to be able to manage their business. So we have to find a way where marketer, buyer, and seller are all able to function in a little bit of a new world economy.
Yeah, and Peter, we've talked about similar things as well. It's just we need the ability to be able to move around the portfolio based off of the coming needs that are always going to be changing based off of an individual client's business objectives. So if they're going for a strategic audience and they want to plus up or plus down, we just need that ability to move around to be less prescriptive about one particular channel within the portfolio. And I agree with John that it's a challenge because it has to be that give or take, and you have to be able to manage your inventory, make sure that you have some committed spend to be able to offer me the value that we're looking for. But it is something that we just need to continue to evolve together, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, Peter, it's like a lot of, and I'm not saying you can go to the extreme of how digital deals are constructed with kind of an overall endeavor amount, and then how that money is spent across the year is pretty flexible. You know, you don't know exactly, and again, you may have to know which client it's coming from or which category to manage your inventory. So you have to find kind of that middle ground of like the extreme of maybe how digital's done to how linear used to be, and find a new model that could work for you and work for us that feels a lot more flexible and fluid.
Could we find a different word than endeavor?
I'm open to that. What do you, yeah,
Well, I
what do
don't
you
know.
think?
I hate that word
Okay.
because everybody has
I'm
a
open
different
to it.
definition of
Yeah,
what
that's
that
fair.
really means.
That's a fair point. I'm open to it.
Stephanie, from, Joe alluded to it, and we were going to get to it. We're going to get to it now. Alternative currencies. When you see all this stuff going on, all these big events, and everyone talking about it, does it make you happy? Does it make you nervous? At least when it comes to the thing that Joe was talking about and referencing to, when it comes to sort of baseline pricing that you've had for years, going forward, when things change, and they're going to change in September, in theory, Nielsen's told us, there's going to be equal ways to see where you were last year, but streaming is going to be a component of it somewhere down the line, and someone's going to be using it for you, selling it to you that way. How important is it that you make any decisions near term?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably one where if my Omnicom partners were here,
Okay, right,
but
there you go.
not to say that we're not
I mean,
involved
just
in
from a
the
client
topic.
side, I know that, obviously.
But yeah, I mean, I think I wouldn't say it makes us nervous, but I think it's something we're aware of, and we work with our agency partners very closely to understand how we should be handling and approaching. I think, like I had said, sort of our data-driven linear approach has been our probably our start or our solve right now for delivering against audiences. It's not currencies, but it's a way for us to have confidence that we're delivering against our specific audiences. So.
Jason, do you want to? I mean, is there anything in particular? You referenced alternative currencies, but is it just another input? I mean, or is there more than that?
I wouldn't say it's another input. I think it's not individual currencies. It's the overall advancement. We have the technology and the data sets to make better decisions. Simple as that. And we're able to get more precise in terms of the value of the inventory that we purchase on behalf of our clients. That's all we're striving to, right? So as long as we're moving in that direction in the most meaningful way possible, and as long as we're doing so in a fashion that, again, connects not just the inventory, but our ability to plan and quantify the impact of that inventory, then that's great.
David, your clients?
Yeah, no,
any reaction, or maybe not? They depend.
Well, I agree.
Depend on you.
One, I will say we've been guaranteeing and transacting on strategic audiences for years, and we'll continue to go in that direction. A lot of the conversation has to do with demo buying and what we're going to do in this market, and I totally agree that we want the highest fidelity, most accurate data imaginable. To do that, I think that we can't overlook the challenges from an operational perspective going into this market, that we just have to make sure that we're making sure that things are interoperable. Is everyone talking the same language? Does everyone want to participate with Nielsen big data or whatnot? So there's a lot of hurdles to get over before you can just say, yeah, we want to use the best data available. There's a lot of operational things that need to be taken into consideration, and how long the data has been available for all of us to analyze and make accurate predictions on.
John, I guess a couple of weeks ago, Disney said they're going to allow for programmatically to allow the Trade Desk and Google to sell some of their inventory. I don't know if it's going to be premium inventory. I might doubt it. But how does that concern you? And referencing what David said concerning all the different ways that brands can buy into all kinds of videos. I mean, it's kind of like the network kind of opening up their taps a little bit to make sure they get everything possible that maybe some things might be out of, that they think perhaps are missing from their viewpoint.
Well, I think we talked about quite a few of the issues that surround that. When you get into multiple partners selling the same inventory and not knowing where it's coming from, when you end up having an issue, it's who is accountable, and that's, to me, the biggest issue that we've got right now. And that is when there is a problem, everybody, points to the other person. And at the end of the day, it's the marketer who ends up getting caught holding the bag, and that's my concern.
Got it. Okay. Again, any questions out there? Anyone? There are a few over there. We're going to go. If you can identify yourself, that'd be good.
How's it going? Mark Kroc, AMC Networks. So, Wayne, you hit some points at the beginning in your opening remarks about JIC certified alternative currency. Dave, you made some great points there on interoperability, the challenges to get operational. Jason, you talked about planning on the currency and being able to plan on the currency. Is Nielsen ready for big data this up front, is my question to 4 holdcos up there.
Anyone want to take a shot at it? Maybe Jason first? I don't know. Or Maureen?
One word answer, no. I mean, take a look at it. Is it better data? That's what we're being told. Do we see the full picture of a full year of data? No, not yet. Do we see the numbers bouncing around? Yes. Does that make me uncomfortable going into this marketplace? Absolutely. And I think we need to get that situation in order before we start transacting, millions and billions of dollars.
Stephanie, what kind of protection? I mean, when you hear that, that maybe Nielsen isn't all there right now, at least going forward.
It's not just Nielsen.
Okay.
Let's be clear.
Who else? Everybody. Some worse than others?
I wouldn't go there, but
okay.
I mean, there are issues with all of the alternative currencies,
Yeah.
and we have to address those. And I would prefer to do that separate from a transactional marketplace.
Yeah, it's without naming names. It's the stability of the data because it keeps changing, and that was my point before. That even when you reference something that we can look at it starting in January 23, but don't forget that fourth quarter was a strike year. That will always have an asterisk. So we're using fourth quarter 23 to plan for fourth quarter 24 for a total anomaly year. So the challenge is the stability of the data, and it's changing as it needs to, right? So it needs to be keep evolving. But then how do you make, to John's point, billions of dollars worth of decisions on that is concerning.
Right. We had another question in the middle there.
Yeah, hi, Ryan Gephardt with Affinity Answers. Not to be too redundant here, but I wonder if there's a particular, talking about outcomes and, particular metrics, media metrics, is there a particular outcome or metric that you hear your brand clients being more excited about, more impressed with than, say, metrics in the past? Something as simple as video completion rate just doesn't seem to be, the future. I wonder what do you see your brand, and maybe this is a question for Pepsi, what do the brands get excited about when it comes to measuring outcomes?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's twofold. I would say, like, at the end of the day, it's about business outcomes. So driving share and driving share, driving volume. Brand teams, right? Like, I sit in a media center of excellence. I would say brand teams get excited maybe about different KPIs than we do. We still look at things like reach is really important, incremental reach, reducing frequency, efficiencies. Brand teams, I think there's a lot of interest in brand health metrics, and they probably come up more than you would think. So I think it depends, but for us, I think what we've gotten excited about recently from a media perspective is really the audience guarantees, the incremental reach, and the reduced frequency.
I would echo that. Just in terms of the client constituency that we represent, it would definitely be a business outcome of some sort. The ability for retail networks to incorporate the data sets, make that easier in many instances. The adoption of clean rooms and making sure that we actually are able to quantify uplift or through incrementality. Those are areas that are very prominent right now.
Anyone else? I'll take that. One of the things, and one last point, I'm just kind of interested in some of the big independent TV station groups really kind of upping their game and trying to get into the national TV space. Maybe it's, as a result of, when it comes to, maybe local TV and looking to expand their purview. How do you evaluate some of them, whether it's Sinclair, Nexstar, or, anyone else out there?
I think there's a lot of good partners out there that add value to find that incrementality that Maureen was talking about before. So if you can find the right entry point with the right partner to deliver that incremental reach, we're all for it. So we work with most of them to make sure that we're delivering against our objectives.
Any other particular, seller out there who, I mentioned Amazon. Obviously, YouTube keeps on moving up, at least trying to, that are factors in the marketplace. Maureen, that we haven't really talked about?
No, I think you touched on the big ones. Obviously, like I said, social media is huge, and social video and the role that continues to play as far as whether it's TikTok, Snapchat, right, et cetera. So I think just the role in the growing, I would say that's an area that we continue to see grow in terms of our clients' spend is social. And again, they're all obviously getting into the, not that they're not there, they're growing their video, right, I would say their video presence.
And John, what about retail media? Obviously they seem to be growing by, that's another area. Are they a factor, competitor, along with social?
Well, I think they're just another choice. It's another opportunity. And, we all talk about fragmentation and the sheer number of players that we have to consider. We should be looking at this as a great thing. This is a way to really get at the consumer, and you're not limited to 3 or 4 different options. We've got so many different options now, whether it's at time of purchase or whether it's in time of entertainment, whatever it might be. There's so many different options out there for us to consider. And that's why, frankly, I think the planning job has gotten very, very difficult to effectively find those audiences in the right environment, in the right context, and the right content. Frankly, I think it's a really exciting time in our business, but unfortunately, all we all talk about are the issues surrounding all the fragmentation. And the fact is, we've got great opportunity in front of us. And if we're smart marketers, we'll take advantage of it.
Okay, that's a good word. We'll leave right there. And I want to thank all my guests here, and I want to give them a nice hand. We appreciate you. Thank you.